It's day 4, number 64, with the man, Frank Scalish.
Sup, people? We got a good show today.
We have diagrams, we have slides, we have pictures, we have baits, we have techniques. We got a good one today. What are we talking about today, Uncle Frank?
I want to discuss a very prominent pre-spawn pattern that actually goes off on just about every reservoir in the entire country. It's going to be a good. This is going to be a good one today.
There are guys on what we're going to talk about today who have kind of made their careers off of what we're going to talk about.
100%.
Flipping laydowns, identifying positive laydowns, figuring out how to tackle them, how good they are, what makes good laydowns. I mean, it is a flipping, cranking festival today.
It is. It's going to be really a neat show today. I'm going to get into some detail on how, at least how I approach blowdowns, what I look for, what makes one better than the other, during what circumstances. I'm going to show you literally just a small array of my all-time favorite baits for this situation. They are my go-to baits, and they are always on when I'm fishing wood like that. We will discuss that in detail. It's going to be a good show.
I was trying to think. I mean, they're in Florida. They're in a lot of canals in Florida. There's also even laydowns and blowdowns and all sorts of stuff, even around natural lakes. They're up north. They're all over the country. I was trying to think if there's any lake that I have fished where at some point, unless it's extreme drought, really low, or a drawdown where there's nothing in the water, and even then you might be able to find some on bluffs if they have channel swings. My question is, can you think of any fisheries that don't have some type of, maybe some of the desert fisheries, probably the desert fisheries.
Maybe,
but outside of that, some laydowns or blowdowns in the water, I mean, that applies to pretty much every lake in the country, or pond or stream or river.
To some degree, yes. Some of the natural grass lakes during that pre-spawn time, that won't be my main focus, but it's definitely something to look at if you're in spawning areas. The bass in the true grass lakes behave slightly different.
Before we get into
natural grass lakes.
Before we get into it, I want to make sure to mention last week during the live show. This is a recorded show. I'm currently at Ross Barnett right now, competing day one of the first Bassmaster Central Open of the year. But last week, Frank unveiled yet another LureNet code, 15% off of anything you want to purchase at lurenet.com, and that code is capital, all one word, Bass Talk, BASSTALK, for 15% off your purchase at LureNet. So there you go. Save some money. That needs to be the slogan. Save money, get yelled at less.
That's exactly. Save your marriage, save money. It's perfect. It's perfect.
But I used the 15% off code from Uncle Frank. Okay.
Well, dude, isn't that the excuse that we hear? Well, they were on sale.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Why are you buying another pair of shoes? You have 35 pairs of shoes. Well, they were on sale. Look at what I saved. So, Bass Talk. we can use the same excuse. Bass Talk, all caps, one word, 15% off. Look at all the money you'll save.
There you go. All right. I see you've got, like I said, 5 slides, a little bit of an outline for the show. So, Frank, the floor is yours.
Well, okay. So here's two things prompted this show today. One was when I watched you guys the other day on your I think it was day 2, right?
The one with Brad Hallman in studio, where we went over our James River finishes.
100%. So that prompted this whole thing onto me, because that's starting to take place up here now, where the bass are coming in from winter movement. They're staging up. Some of the lakes were still catching them off the bank, but not far off the bank. Some of the lakes, because of all the rain we've had high water episodes, and those fish are plastered in the bushes. So that's kind of what that's kind of what led me to this, because it's super timely, and you guys did such a good job on that show analyzing the non-mistakes you guys made, where your adjustments went wrong. I thought that was a really as a fisherman, I thought that was really a good show because you kind of laid it right out there, and you had supporting video showing what you were doing, how and why, and it was a good video, dude. It was just a really good show. So that prompted this, to be honest with you. And I was going to do it last Thursday, but with bringing in a new discount code for the loyal listeners, I thought that we would save it for this Thursday. And
I would like to point out, even if you're an unloyal listener, that discount code will stay.
That's right. Even if you're a friend of a loyal listener, that discount.
If you're a casual listener.
If you just happen to scroll by and see 15% off Capital Bass Talk,
feel free to take advantage of that offer, exactly. Regardless of your level of loyalty.
Right, exactly. So there you have it in a nutshell. So basically, what I want to do is we're going to talk about fishing different types of wood, because here's what happens. First, let's talk about what happens. As the water temperatures, as the days of the sun increase, the bass start to move shallow. Once they get shallow, as the water temperatures start to rise, because now remember, they are now in shallow water. And when I say shallow, I'm talking, 6 foot or less. Now they're going to start to feel the warming shallow water temperatures. When they were out there, they didn't know what the heck was going on. They moved because of the daylight. Now they're there. Now they're going to start experiencing their environment. As they get closer to the spawn, we call the pre-spawn anytime in the spring prior to the spawn. But the real pre-spawn lasts for about anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks, depending on where you're at, when these fish are just ballistic. They want that overhead cover. They want that wood. They want the shallow water, and they are biting. This is probably one of the best times to be fishing if you're a bass fisherman, in the real true pre-spawn time.
Is this Mother Nature's way of them getting up there, realizing it is time to spawn, and somehow knowing how much energy it will take for them to spawn successfully, and this is the window of opportunity for them to pack in as many calories as possible and hunt down as much food as they can get before they go through the stress of spawning?
That is absolutely correct, because bass only have one thing on their mind, period, and that's surviving and survival. Everything a bass does is based and predicated on instinct. That instinct is food, cover, spawning, and survival, period. That's why it's their whole reason for existing. Okay.
Oh, that's interesting, because what we're talking about today, I just realized it. A blowdown or a laydown has all 4 of those things.
Absolutely, 100%. Now it's going to get even more nitty gritty. So let's first let's talk about structure, terrain, underwater structure, not the physical blowdown itself, but what's going on in the water, by the wood, under the wood, near the wood. So here's what I look for. Some of the best flipping wood that you're going to find in that pre-spawn era is going to be in pockets, smaller pockets with true, for the guys down south, they're called drains, where the runoff comes in. They're old stream beds. They're very defined. There might be a flat that comes out, but then a very defined little creek edge. That's how these fish get into these pockets. Anywhere you have that creek edge, the ditch, whatever you want to call it, that sharper drop in depth, and it could only be a matter of 2 feet. It doesn't have to be, it's not a monster canyon. It's just a change in depth that's very rapid. Anywhere those channels swing up against the bank and start to turn and meander around, everywhere they swing up against the bank, anywhere there's wood on those little ditches, those are the first highest percentage pieces of wood cover that you're going to look at. As it progresses, you're going to start to focus on the wood that's on the flatter banks, the shallower, flatter banks. As that water starts to warm up some more degrees, you want the wood on those flatter banks. And then, of course, you want the buck brush and the stuff that's in the back of the pockets once they start to spawn. So that's kind of a broad idea of what to keep in your head when you're looking at wood, because all wood is not created equal. Okay. I'm going to give you guys a really good example of this. A long time ago, a buddy of mine was fishing a tournament on a lake up here that is absolutely known for flipping willow tops and buckbrush in the spring. If you're not in that stuff, you're not catching a thing. So he said, hey, you want to come out and practice with me? I got a tournament coming up. And I said, yeah, sure, I'm game. I'll go. So I grabbed literally 3 rods with me, because you don't have to get goofy with tackle during this time of year. So I got some of my favorite baits, and I go. And I said, Bobby, I said, you just go where you want to go. I'm not going to guide you. You just go where you want to go. So we go to this first stop, and it was perfect spot. It was a lead-in point on a small pocket loaded with buckbrush. The entire pocket was loaded with buckbrush. So we start flipping our way in. We didn't just run into the back because we weren't sure where these fish were yet. So we started on the outside, flipping our way up into it. Okay. The first bush we pitched into, whack, we both got one. And they were pound and a halfers. We went through this pocket just catching them, pound and a half, pound and a half. I spotted a piece of hardwood on the opposite bank that I can make a flip to. So I flipped over to it and I caught a 4-pounder. And my buddy turns around, he called me Hank. He goes, Hank, they're in the bushes. And I go, no, they're not. I go, we got to focus on hardwood. We got to get out of these buck brushes. You're not going to win this tournament on the buck brush. And he goes, what are you talking about? You just caught a 4-pounder. I go, dude, look where he came from. It was a piece of hardwood. So we put the trolling motor on high, and I started zipping down the bank. And every time we came to some hardwood, big, hard blowdown wood, like oaks and stuff like that, 4-pounder, 4-pounder, 4-pounder. Anytime we focused on buckbrush, we caught little males. Okay. So this was very critical in the day. So now I said, okay, we got to change something up here, because this pattern is established. We don't even need to make another cast, dude. I said, all you got to do is come out here and do nothing but run from hardwood to hardwood. Don't even flip a bush top, because if you do that, you're going to waste too much time. I said, there's some flats with hardwood on them. Let's go check the hardwood on the flats, because that could be something that these guys are going to overlook, because they're going to all be piled in against the shore. So we go to this flat. It's got 2 big blowdowns on it. We took 4 fish off of each of the blowdowns. Okay. So I'm like, holy smokes, dude. I said, we're done fishing wood. We're completely done. We're not making another cast. All we're going to do now is go around this entire lake and mark every single hardwood on your GPS. That's all we're doing. And that's what we did the rest of the day. Okay. 3-4 days later, I think it was a week, I think it was a week later, his tournament comes down to play. He blew their doors off in that tournament. These guys weren't even close to what he had. And all he did was run all of the hardwood. He ignored all the bushes, buckbrush. He didn't fish any of it. So part of what we're going to do today is you have to understand what the bass are telling you, because this time of year, you are going to catch a lot of fish on the wood, and not all of them are going to be what you need. So there's going to be 1 or 2 slightly different factors that come into play where you can fine tune the pattern to catch the bigger fish. So now let's go to, I guess we could just go to, let's approach a blowdown. So I guess we can go to any one of them. Doesn't even matter. Go to the first one. We might as well just go to the first one. Okay, that's a very typical scenario of what you're going to find here. Now, obviously, there's leaves on the tree. That's a
describe that blowdown real quick, just for the iTunes listeners.
Okay, so what we have here is we have 2 trees from the bank that fell in the water. They're older trees. They got some gnarly bark on them. You have actually, you have in the background, you have a stump of a tree where it broke off in the water. So the root system is obviously in the water. To the left of the blowdown, you have branches that fell off of a tree that are not connected to the main blowdown. It's just a pile of branches. Okay, so we look at this. When I look at this, okay, I know exactly where my first cast is going to be, the most highest percentage cast that I believe I can make on this blowdown. But I'm not taking it first, because what if the bass are relating to the branches hanging out over the deeper water? Right, exactly. So we have to approach this blowdown from the outside in, because we are establishing a pattern. So I fish my way in the blowdown. That doesn't mean I drive my boat into the tree. That means I cast my way. Where your arrow is right now is probably one of the second highest percentage spot on that blowdown, right in that, right there, where all those branches meet the main trunk of the tree. That's probably your highest percentage spot, one of them. The other highest percentage spot is where the main trunk of the tree meets that standing stump right there where you were. No, right where you were, right there. That's one of the highest percentage areas you can flip in this blowdown, and there as well. So now that we know that, right, we fish our way in. We find out and establish where the bite's coming from. Okay. So let's say the bite's coming from where the tree meets the water, where all the freaking branches are, the big pile of branches. Yes. So let's say that's where the main trunk meets all that ganglia branches. Let's say we get, in this blowdown, we get bit right there. So now when you approach another blowdown, you could assume that you got to start fishing where the meat of the trunk meets the branches to the bank. Okay. So we're going to eliminate. Okay. Now that's how you're going to establish your pattern in the wood. Okay. What if you cast to the high percentage spot first and you catch a 2-pounder? Now you got to drag him all the way through that entire tree to get him into your boat. So if the bigger bass, the 4-pounders and 5-pounders, are sitting out underneath the deeper limbs, you just spooked them out of that tree, and you will not know that. So you will have missed a very important clue. That's why you always fish out to in. You fish from the end of it to where it meets the bank first to establish a pattern. If I fished this particular blowdown and I didn't get bit till I got to the trunk on the bank, the very next blowdown I come to, I'm still fishing it from out to in. It's not going to be until I get to my 3rd or 4th tree that I'm going to really establish the pattern, because then I know it's for real. Just like fishing docks. Matt, you fish tons of docks.
Always start on the outside corner, high percentage part, and then work your way in towards the back. And after you catch 3 or 4, then you either skip the back or you skip the outside, or
Correct.
You figure out where they're sitting on the dock, or if there's a cross beam down there, if it's vertical meeting horizontal, and then you can just go dunk, dunk, dunk and go down a row of docks in 10 minutes instead of an hour.
That's correct. So the blowdowns are no different. You're going to break them apart just like you would break down a boat dock. Now, the other thing you need to pay attention to is what's going on that blowdown. There's sometimes on some of these lakes, the willow trees are still alive. they're in the water and they're still alive and they have green leaves on them. Some of them have no leaves on them. So now I'll establish, do they want the branches with the leaves, or do they want bare branches? So every blowdown you come to, you analyze what type of wood it is. I don't remember what other photos we have. What's the next photo? Just curious. I don't remember what order I sent them to you in.
I have to. I gotta doctor them up a little bit before.
Yeah, that's okay. Is that? Oh yeah, that's the white pine tree with all the branches in the water.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, so the first blowdown that I showed you before this picture was a hardwood tree. And this blowdown, and you can see by all the line tangled around it that other people like it as well.
Or hate it.
Or hate it. So now you're going to start to establish type of wood cover. Okay. The unique thing about this particular blowdown is, and I know for a fact because I fish it, it has an undercut bank where the main trunk meets the shoreline. It's undercut. It's about 3 feet deep, right where those green leaves are. Okay. I know that for a fact. It flattens out, so the entire blowdown is over about 3.5 to 4 feet of water right to the bank. This blowdown here is actually a money shot. I catch fish off of that blowdown almost every time when they're using wood. So anyway, so I'm looking at this. This one's old pine, and you can obviously see everywhere you want to flip a bait in this one. It's very evident. Every lane in between the branches gets a toss. And again, I'm going to start outside to in on this particular tree. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip my bait where the last branches meet the leaves, right there. I'm skipping my bait all the way up underneath there, getting it underneath that green canopy, because I know from experience it's undercut there. And that is going to be the best ambush spot ever, because it's got good overhead cover for the bass and they feel safe and protected there. That's the high percentage spot and that particular blowdown. Now, we could dissect blowdowns a million ways to Sunday, and it's going to always be the same. You fish out to in. You always take the outside branches and fish your way into the tree until you establish a pattern. If I know that every cast that I make where the main trunk meets the bank of the lake, I catch a big one. Okay? Half the time I'm not even going to cast there in practice, because I don't want to take a chance and hook a fish I can otherwise catch in the tournament. Now, if I'm fun fishing, different story. But if I'm practicing for an event, I'm not hooking those fish. Those are easy fish. They're not going anywhere. And if they do leave, something's replacing it, and they're going to use the exact same spot because it's the best spot on that particular tree. Okay? So you want to be careful. That's if I'm practicing, then I got my screw lock in. I don't even have a hook in the bait, and that's how I'm practicing for that. Once I establish where the biggest bites are coming from, that's how I work that, run that pattern. Now, remember, you always have to pay attention to your bottom, the way your bottom makeup is, and what the bottom composition is also. Because if you have hard bottom under these trees and you pull up to a tree that looks like every other tree in the lake and you catch a 5-pounder under it, you need to know, did that 5-pounder want the gravel and sand that's underneath there, or was he in the dirt and the mud and the clay? So you have to establish these things. This is how you can become a much better angler when it comes to wood, because there's a lot of variables that you have to pay attention to when you're flipping wood. Just like when we did our grass show, there was a ton of different vegetation types. They grew in different bottom compositions. It's no different. Blowdowns are easy. I see it, I fish it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go with that mentality, I see it, I fish it, I catch a fish out of it, you're going to miss massive clues. Is there shells under there? Is it sand? Is it rock? Is it mud? Is it clay? What type of wood is it? Is it a willow tree? Is it a hardwood? Is it buckbrush? So you have to pay attention to all of these factors, okay? Because this is what's going to hone in on the better bite, better pattern, more consistency. All right, so I don't know what other picture do we got there? I think I got a. Okay, this
one intrigues me, Frank,
yes,
because this is the one that I have the most trouble with, and I know that there's always fish on them.
100%. This is what I call an old blowdown. It has no branches on it. Mm-hmm. It's only got big trunk stuff left.
Down south, we call that an isolated laydown.
Correct. That right there, that bait right there. I mean, bait. That tree right there is not as, it's tricky, but it's not that tricky. For the most part, if I pull up to it first, I'm still fishing my way from out to in.
But there's doesn't appear as though there's much to fish out there. This is what I run into. You've got, a main
beam,
but it's kind of narrow. Now with forward-facing sonar, you can see what's around there. Usually not, but like I feel like if you flip it, you're not like flipping into anything. You're just kind of around. There's a lot of open water around it. It's hard for me to dissect the top half of this laydown. Is where I struggle as to where to fish the top half of this thing.
Exactly. You know where the high percentage spot is on this one. It's obvious as the day is long.
Yeah. There's going to be two, like obviously where the branch meets the there, and then obviously right there.
Right, where the trunk comes off the shore and where the main beam splits are your high percentage spots. So when I approach this one, I got my Norman Fat Boy on.
Crankbait.
Crankbait, which I'm going to talk about two square bills that I use constantly, like when I'm fishing blowdowns. Basically, I got 2 flipping baits out, 2 square bills out, and a spinner bait. And then I have a little deeper diver crankbait that I know comes through the wood good. So here's what I'll do. I parallel the long skinny trunk with the Fat Boy, because the bass on that are suspending underneath it. Now you could swim jig that too, but that's not my main choices for these. That right there, that is square bill all the way. Once I get
underhand roll cast, you just kind of come out, you position your boat 20, 30 feet out in here, and you're making a little underhand roll cast.
That's
and you're running
it
3 foot parallel all down the edge of
each bare branch is how I'm going to approach that. Each bare branch. Then I'm going to take my flipping stick and throw right in the crotch, right there, where the 2 big branches come out of the water. I'm throwing right in the crotch with my flipping stick, and then I'm going to work my way back to the bank on both sides of that tree. And that's how you're going to approach these. They are very tricky. But here, fishing from the out in is going to do 2 things. There may be branches that are broken off and sunk under that tree that you don't know about. So if you don't have forward-facing sonar or 360, you're not going to see them. That's when you cast to the crotch of the tree and you work the bait all the way back till you're out of the blowdown, in case you feel some isolated cover down there that's not attached to anything. And that could be a really money spot, because most guys won't even. Like
it looks like there's a little bit here that's kind of grouped.
Yeah, there's
where it's just peeking out.
Right, and in actuality, on this particular blowdown, where you just made the circle, where you see them little skinny branches sticking out, there is a giant brush pile under there.
Okay. Natural, like they got stuck there just on
natural.
A high water moving flow, and then boom, it hits the blowdown, and now you've got some junk under there. Okay.
Natural. This, in my opinion, and I will agree with you, Matt, this blowdown here, to me, the sexy spot is where the big root comes off the bank and the first crotch in the tree.
Yeah, I agree. But you catch a lot out here.
You absolutely
do catch them out here, and I think. Do you think so? Like in this scenario on this tree, I feel like obviously, I mean, if they're spawning, you have a fish that spawns here because they're going to be able to have a hard backing to them. They're still going to have sunlight, but they're going to have something safe behind them so they don't have to guard at 360. And that's why they're in the crotch of the tree. They're sitting there. They have safety on either side. They're still getting sunlight penetration, and they have less that they have to guard of the nest.
100%
That's why they spawn up against stuff. But out here, then, I feel like you have fish that I don't think they sit in one spot. I think you might have them move from the crotch of the tree all the way out to the end, depending on sun penetration conditions, the bait fish that's around, the bluegill that are around. I think you might have fish that own a couple fish that own it, but you kind of have to find them in it. So you might catch them out towards the end, or you might catch them out towards the crotch. I don't think they're like, oh, I'm past the crotch, I'm not moving out towards the end anymore. In this
no,
instance.
because here, remember, we're pre-spawn, okay? So there's a lot of fish moving to these places right now. Pre-spawn fish love overhead cover. The first overhead cover they're going to encounter is the end of that blowdown. This is like a perfect spot for a super fluke, a break-in shad, a slow methodical bait that you can pitch around these outside branches.
Even a dinger.
Even a wacky rig dinger, and just have it floating around down there. You could pick apart the end of this blowdown real easy with a wacky rig or a flick shake. I mean, real easy.
How many casts are you making on this? Okay, let's do it. Let's say you're coming in here. You're coming up.
Stop right there. The first shadowed blowdown you see to your right, that's my first cast. Okay. Then I'm going to take a cast to the other long, skinny blowdown all the way to the crotch almost.
Okay. Bring it back.
And bring it back there. Then I'm going to save that one. I'm going to take the boat around. I'm going to come back around on the side we started on. And I'm going to go to the back, and I'm going to fish my way out of that tree. Then I'll go around to the brush top. And I won't pull my boat up to that brush top. I'm going to make a longer cast at it because I don't know how big it is yet. Okay.
You don't want to hit that thing with your trolling motor.
No, because what if there's branches that come out from that you don't see? Right.
The whole thing moves. There's bubbles that start coming up.
Yeah, exactly.
You usually say some expletives, and then it gets stuck, and then you get the prop stuck, and you have to and raise it up, and by then your co-angler's hucked one all the way back to the juice.
He's got it.
Messed up 3/4 of it.
Exactly.
Sorry, I got a little PTSD with that. But.
No, but I'm totally down with that. I mean, I'm totally down with that. That's exactly the accurate truth. And so I don't want to say it's like simple knowledge, because it's exciting when you see a good blowdown in the water. To go right for the heart, right for the heart of it. You know what I mean? Right for the high percentage spot. You know that you're going to catch one there, and then you ignore the rest of it. But we're trying to figure out the biggest, best bite possible. Okay, so let's go to another one, and I won't know what it is till it pops up. So we'll see.
All right.
Big gnarly one. Yeah, the big gnarly one.
That one's also a nightmare.
Yeah, to me, this is the biggest nightmare out there, because you have 50 places that bass could be, from the very outside of it all the way to the bank. So this one, you have to be very quiet, very meticulous when you fish it. You can't plunk a bait in there. You got to lay it in there. You got to start on the outside, and you got to pick every piece of this apart. And the more methodical you are, the more your chances of catching a big one, because a blowdown like this usually has a big one on it somewhere. So you don't want to crash the branches. You don't want to be pulling the boat in on a branch and moving the tree. You have to be stealthy. We all know the high percentage spot on this blowdown is right where it's coming out of the water from when it fell into the bank. Right there. Right there. We know that's the high percentage spot. We can't be impatient. We have to fish our way into that. And we have to do it slow and methodical. When you see trees like this, underwater, there's so much stuff going on, okay? that it's like a grass bed where you got caverns and things where the bass can move
city.
around.
It's its own community.
That's right.
It's an entire ecosystem in that one blowdown.
That's right. So in this position, I'm not going to pitch a bait in there, let it hit the bottom, lift it up, reel it out of the water, pitch it in again, let it hit the bottom. I'm going to pitch it in the heaviest stuff I can, let it go down there, lift it up, drop it, shake it, lift it up, drop it, because I might call a fish from 2 to 3 feet away to come and get it. So I'm going to give them a chance. You follow me?
Yep.
Where your cursor is now is probably on this, well, it is because I know this blowdown is the most isolated branch on this whole blowdown. That almost is a standalone blowdown because it looks like the background branches are really close to that, but they're probably 7 feet away from it. That branch where your cursor is right now on this particular one really is by itself. That's a good high percentage flip right there. Okay, then I'll work my way into the blowdown. Now, I know we're talking about the same stuff on every single picture we show you, but I'm doing it to hammer the point home. Once you establish where most of your better bites are coming from, you don't have to fish like that. You can go right to the high percentage spots and take care of business. Okay? But we're trying to establish where the best, biggest bites come from. Because if you catch a lot of little fish on the outside branches, but every time you go to where the big trunk meets the water, you catch a giant one, when you're in a tournament, you're going for the big one first.
Yep.
You never ignore your big bites in a tournament. You ignore the smaller ones because you can always go and catch them later. You know what I mean? So you have to really pay attention to the big bites. So now I think the next one is really something really cool. Is that the stuff that's on the bank? The tree trunks?
I believe so.
Oh, yeah, put this up. This next photograph right here, this photograph right here is so money, okay? Because this is one of the most perfect places that you could flip in the spring. These fish are going to be plastered right on the bank. This is another one where it's an undercut bank. You have these giant root systems that are right there, and those fish will literally spawn right there. You will have spawners that spawn right flat up against that thing. Now I know this one intimately, so I know the water depth that's around it. They will spawn on this one right here. This, and it's easy as pie to fish. They're super easy to fish. You would think that there's a million branches coming off of this one, but in actuality, it dies into the mud and there's nothing around it but that. They come out about 4 feet, but that's it. This thing is spectacular. So this will get my flip in, my pitch in, my square bills, spinner bait, whatever you're throwing around this one. But if it's me, I'm pitching something in there before I throw anything else. This is getting some type of soft plastic on a slip sinker.
Just because it's so obviously high percentage and you don't have to really work your way into it. It's just
correct.
If they're there, they're there. You don't have
That's
to figure
100% correct. There's no figuring that out. That's just a money shot. So I believe we covered all that now.
Yeah,
the only thing,
go back to this before we go in real quick here.
Go
Uncle
for
Frank. And this is something that I struggle with. All right, we're going back to this one.
Yeah,
this has the the diameter of this. All right, let's say I'm working my way in, right?
Yes.
And I do the old little deal where I flip it in there and I get a skip and then I loop that line around that little lay down right there. And now I'm snagged and I've got my tungsten, but I haven't worked this and I haven't worked this. And if I pull on it, the whole tree's going brr, 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 and I don't want to break it off. Are you sacrificing one for the team there to keep from completely?
Yes, I'm going to answer this question so easily it's sickening. If I'm in a tournament situation, I am not disturbing that tree under no circumstances.
Does it disturb it if you're pulling it and everything around it's moving the whole, a lot of those branches have give, so even when you are pulling it now, I've never in my life cut a fishing line because then it leaves the tag end and everything. I always pull it, and then it breaks right close. What you're in a pickle there. I mean, you've got a 25-foot of line, you can't pull it, you can't go in to get it. Like, what do you do to keep from totally jacking that thing up?
There's two things you can do. Okay. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll set the rod aside, pointing off the opposite end of the boat, keeping the line away from my trolling motor. I'll pick up my other flipping stick and finish it.
Okay. As long as you're not in a derb.
Right. As long as I'm not going to disturb anything.
Well, the other thing, legal. Sometimes if you have a line in the water, you can't pick up another one.
Right. So the other thing you can do is you carry a bobber with you, and you wrap the line around the bobber and cut your line and let the bobber float, and then fish the rest of the tree out, and then go pick up the bobber and get the rest of your line out and go in and get it.
That's brilliant, Frank. Yeah. I've never even heard of that in my life.
Yeah, 100%, dude. If I'm in a tournament, I will not ruin that tree.
Big red and white bobber.
Oh, yeah, man. Basketball size cork. Just hook it up, cut the line, throw it out of there, and then you can fish around the tree. You can actually fish both sides of the tree, fish the entire blowdown, then go get it.
Get your tungsten and your hook and your weight
exactly.
And the line out of there.
100%.
That's really smart.
Yeah.
That's really smart.
That's my approach.
All right. That answers the question.
So now I want to talk about, some baits, because I'm a freak with this. So here's the thing. All right. Back in the old days, I had a lizard on 100% of the time. I threw a lizard. Standard 6-inch lizard. Color schemes, super easy. June bug, green pumpkin blue, or Magic Craw or Bama Magic. Depends on what brand you're using. Those are my colors. Okay. Sometimes watermelon candy if I'm in that situation, but usually green pumpkin or green pumpkin blue or Bama Magic covers that thing. I started going from the lizard, where I'm going to fish the lizard like 50% of the time, and the other 50% of the time I have a spine craw on. This is a June bug spine craw. Okay, now the Zoom speed craw I used to throw a ton, but the difference between this and the Zoom speed craw is this gives you about one body segment more length to it, which I love because that makes this part of the bait move more. Here, let me show you. Well, first I want to show you a trick. So my go-to bait is the Yum Spine Craw. My second go-to bait, and trust me when I tell you, they're both my number one choices. I have them both rigged. Is the Money Craw. This is Bama Magic, by the way. The Money Craw and the Spine Craw. Now here's how I rig them both exactly the same. So here's how I rig it. So what I'm going to do is, and I don't have light in here, so this is going to be kind of tricky for me. Okay, so the eyes are on the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over on the belly, and where the first segment is, this first little segment right here, there's on the bait, you see the point, the rib that goes to a point? Yep. Right behind that point, I'm going to insert a glass rattle, okay? And so I'm going to do that and make sure that it's nice and straight.
Just a little thin glass rattle with 2 BBs in it.
Yes. I'm going to make
You
sure
ever spill
it's
those, Uncle Frank?
yeah. Yeah, and they are not fun. So the rattle's in there, okay? The rattle is in the bait now.
Okay.
So now I'm going to take my 2-aught.
Shake that. Can you hear it? Could we audibly hear that?
We could here. Wait, wrong face. I don't think we can.
Okay. But it's just something that just a little bit of tick like a crawfish on the bottom, or something that just gives them a little
ticking noise. Listen, I have a 125 gallon aquarium. I had bass and crayfish and all kinds of game fish in the thing, and I had it loaded up with crayfish. You can hear them things clicking and ticking.
Really?
Yes, like I was very surprised. So I put my ear to the fish tank. I had some crayfish come to the edge of the glass, and I put my ear to that fish tank, and you can absolutely hear them clicking, 100% clicking. So I always, whenever I'm flipping, I've always got a small rattle in this thing.
Good stuff. Where do you get those?
Oh gosh, I got them online. I mean,
okay, but it's not the fat ones. It's a thin. No, it's very thin, and then the glass actually makes the point.
Correct. Super thin glass point. So now I'm going to rig the bait. I'm going to Texpose it. I'm not going to Texas rig it. Hold on. Let me see. It's going to blow me out here when I turn the light on. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to Texpose this thing. And again, here, like on my hooks, I tied my keeper systems on the hook already and everything. So it's all done. So now I'm going to rig it up. And we're going to Texpose it. You got to forgive me. I can't literally.
No,
there's
it's all good.
No light here. So then I'll cinch the. These bobber stoppers are great, dude. So then I'll cinch the bobber stopper down. Now on Junebug, you see I painted my weights Junebug.
Whoa, that looks seamless.
Right, and then on my green pumpkin ones, I paint the slip sinkers green pumpkin.
Think that gets you more bites, or it just makes it look cool and it gives you more confidence?
I think it gives me more confidence. I got a friend of mine who won't paint a slip sinker to save his life, and he catches just as many.
It looks better that way, though.
Yeah, but it looks great this way, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it literally does.
I mean, that's just money. Okay, so it's Texposed. You can see that, and the nice thing about the spine craw, it's got a center rib that runs right down the center of the bait, so you can always make sure that you're centered in the bait, so you don't have any kinks or anything. That's the whole key. You don't want any kinks in it. This is my number one go-to flipping bait right here. This and the money craw. Like rigging this thing up right now, all I want to do is get out on the water right now. Now, that's my flipping setup, okay? Literally anytime you see me flipping, if you're going to bet your partner what I'm flipping, you're going to win a lot of money with saying these two baits, because they're always on my rods. Always. I'm never not throwing them. If I have 3 rods on my deck, one of them's a lizard. So just so we know, I mean, that's really what I'm flipping. Now, there are times when I'll flip a jig. It just depends on the lake I'm on and how the cover is and, what's going on with that. Because I do flip a jig a lot. But if I'm on a jig bite, then I'm on the jig bite. You know what I mean? But when they're pre-spawn like this, I'm throwing some soft plastics on them.
Just a 6-inch lizard.
6-inch lizard, dude. I throw Junebug and green pumpkin and watermelon candy, and then I'll dye the end of the tail if I have to, with a pen, with a dye pen. I don't like to dip them. I dye them with the pen. The dip is very bright and vibrant, but the dip gets everywhere, and I don't want that crap on my carpeting. So now my other thing is I'm going to tell you the Norman Fat Boy. We all know about the Fat Boy. I talk about it a ton. One of my favorite square bills ever built. This thing is as buoyant as a wood bait. It's made out of butyrate. It's gel coat dipped. It casts so accurate because of the weight of the bait, the bulk of the bait. It casts so accurate it isn't funny. You can lay this thing anywhere with a little underhand roll cast, and you can set it in anywhere without making a noise. Okay, that's my go-to bait. Now, the square bill that never gets attention that I throw a ton, and you guys are going to laugh at me because you're going to think it's like the cheapest square bill on earth, and it is, but it works, is the Bomber Square A. The Bomber Square A in the 05 size is the one I throw. It's the biggest one they make right now. It's the 05. This bait's buoyant. It comes through everything. If it hangs up, it's a accident. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
One of my other go-to square bills. Now, I mentioned earlier that if I'm fishing a little bit deeper, I have another bait I throw, and that's the Norman Deep Baby End. What people don't know about the Norman Deep Baby End, you see the bill design on it. It's a rounded bill, okay? But this bait here comes through everything. If you remember a show we did a long time ago, where I talked about bringing it through the bush tops, the buckbrush tops, and I actually showed a video of that. This thing coming right through buckbrush. I literally cast it over the top of one and reeled it right through it like nothing. This bait comes through wood like nobody knows, and it dives you, gets you deeper. So when you have deeper water around your blowdowns, you know, this is the bait to cover that depth when they're on the bait fish patterns. And then of course, when I'm fishing blowdowns, I'm throwing the small light spinnerbait. This is the War Eagle Finesse spinnerbait. I'm throwing the small light stuff so I could float them down the limbs. I can lay them in the water without making a huge kablam. They come through everything really well, but the profile on them is real tiny. And then don't forget the bait fish that time of year are tiny. So that's really, those are really my baits, you know, when they're in that super pre-spawn mode, and I'm fishing wood. That's pretty much what I got out. I mean, it's not even, I mean, it's the most simplest time to fish. Now, I know we could talk about buzz baits because that's a very important pre-spawn lure. It is. But for the most part, when I'm fishing wood like that, I'm stealth. I'm going in for the flipping and the pitching and the square billing. And I'm going to catch fish that hopefully guys aren't getting.
Hold on here.
Dude, I'm not going anywhere.
I had a question about this. All right, go back to the first square bill. We talked about this one just has a lot of options. I like using this one as an example.
That's good.
So typically, you know, you talked about until I've identified where you're going to work it slow and stuff. But have you found in the pre-spawn when you flip it to the juice, do those fish, do you have to soak it, or for the most part is it in there? Don't got one on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of times as soon as I pitch in there and it's starting to sink, you see the boil half the time. But sometimes I got to shake it. That's what the rattle's for. If I got it, and I'll just shake it with the rattle in there just to make it click.
So let's say you're over here then. This is the other thing that I have learned and have not mastered, but I feel like the guys, the Greg Hackneys, the Swindles, the guys who do this.
Make their living at it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. If they're over here, I would have, if you're over here on this side, on the left side, you have big branch underwater, big branch coming out, baller roots right here. You're over here, you're flipping this stuff. You haven't gone to the right side yet. You know this is your high percentage spot.
Correct.
You would have the urge to go ahead and pitch into that. But are you analyzing your angles and going, okay, I can fish all this, I can fish the end, I can come around here and get set up. So if a 5-pounder does eat it right here, I don't have to haul it over a main branch, trunk of the tree, another main branch, and a ball of wood. So you're analyzing you're analyzing your, I guess, for lack of a better term, exit strategy.
Yes.
Before you make the cast.
100%. Now here's the funny part. Leave this picture up. So let's say I'm poking around and I'm on the clean side of that blowdown. Okay, not where all the ganglia of tree branches are, but I'm approaching it from the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm approaching it from here, which is exactly how I would approach this set of blowdowns. Okay. So as I approach it and I fish it, and then I'm fishing my way around into the gnarly crap that you showed before, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say I get into that gnarly pile right there, and I see an angle that I couldn't make before, like behind the stump sticking up on the right side of that right there. Let's say I couldn't make that pitch, but now when I get to the ganglia of roots, I got a better shot at it.
Yep.
Even though I know that's going to be a nightmare to get a fish out of there, I'm taking the shot because it's an angle I didn't have before, and it just presented itself.
And you weren't going to catch it if you didn't cast in there anyway because you couldn't reach it from the other side.
Correct. Right. Now, the irony about this particular blowdown here is I was fishing a Fat Boy show, and I had the boat in about the position we're at right now. And if you look to the left of your finger, all the way at the end of the tree, right there, you see the line on the green algae in the water, the little line. No, the line where the fishing line made a line. Here, keep going left slowly. Now come back. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Stop. Okay, see the diagonal line in that algae? There it is. That line goes all the way back underneath to the bank of the big, keep going back right there. I pitched the square bill back there and caught one in the video.
Nice.
He was not anywhere else on this tree, but he was in that shadow where the bank makes the shadow in that open spot. And he was laying right in there. I didn't get 2 reel turns off, and it's freaking smoldered it.
Nice.
So you got to pay attention. So I knew then when I was filming that show that I needed to get the square bill underneath the overhanging shadows. And it turned out in that particular day, that's exactly what I did. I went and found all the little open caverns and was catching my fish in the open caverns. I wasn't catching them in the gnarly stuff.
But they were relating. Okay. So then another point on the gnarly stuff. And I'll tell you how I do it and tell you, I want to see how you do it then. This happens. This will happen. If you flip 10 laydowns, you get 10 bites in laydowns. This will happen on 2 or 3 of them. So you work your way around here. You pitch in there. It goes, don't. You reel down. Whack, crack it. You've got it. Now it's stuck.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go crashing into there, doing it, or pulling on them, or doing anything. I have found, and this happened at the James River. It happens constantly. The more you can keep your wits about you, even if it's a big one, because sometimes you'll have your line going into the water down here, and on the other side, it's boiling on the surface on the other side.
100%.
You're like, oh, I'm in a pickle. You've got branches. You can't get up to them. I have found that as long as you know you have that fish on, as long as everything's taken care of, sometimes you just hook one, it's a bad deal, you lose it. Breaks you off, gets down there and tie. But you don't winch on it. You don't charge in there. You just do a slow lean back and you keep steady pressure on them. And as long as you can feel that fish moving and you're giving him direction, it amazes me how many times, and sometimes it's after a minute or two, you can swim that fish out of that as long as they don't wrap and your line buries into it, which is why I don't fish laydowns with braid, because braid buries into the wood.
Oh, it cuts right into it.
It cuts into the wood, and now you're screwed. So as long as you have fluoro or mono on there, you can lead it, and that fish will bounce around. You can feel them swimming in and out of it, and as long as you keep that lead, and then boom, it'll pop free. Now then, I typically don't boat flip it after that, because now I know that I've got abrasion on my line, and I'm gonna get him away from it. But I think that's key on laydowns is when you stick one, I always, either get them out of the cover, blow them out as fast as you can away from it. Sometimes you end up in a position where you really have to be patient. Sometimes it's 5 seconds, sometimes it's 10 or 15, and it's like a pinball machine. You can feel them bouncing around down there.
Yeah,
and more often than not, you can lead them out of the jungle.
Especially if you're flipping. If you catch them flipping, almost all the time, you can get them out. And you're 100% right, dude. It's the hardest thing on earth to do is be patient.
Yeah.
I do the same thing. I keep steady pressure on them, So he's got a place, he's being pulled somewhere, he's fighting you, and then eventually they give in to where they want to go. So they give in to where you're leading them. Now, if you dare let the line go slack, you're screwed because he's going to
because
wrap
now
you
it's
around
looped
20
and you
more
don't
things.
have any idea.
Right.
All right, so hold that
Right.
spine crawl with the hook back up on it. Hold on.
I love this bait so much.
All right,
man.
so that is not a straight shank. It's not an EWG. It's kind of like a hybrid in between there.
Yeah,
But,
it's like a Mustad Ultra Point.
okay, so
Megabyte.
this is super important that a lot of guys, a lot of the big time, or not big time, but I know a couple guys that do it like this. So the gap between that back and the eye, I mean, it's there, but it's not like a straight shank to where it's like a whole deal. So when you give them the onions, so to speak, and you bam, you've got them right through the top. That hook point is then going to face back and be flush up against the face of that fish when
That's
it's all the
exactly
way through.
right. Even
On
if
a
it comes
round
all
bend,
the way through.
On a round bend, and this is also for heavy vegetation, hydrilla stuff, or not hydrilla, anything with like a stalk, cane, stuff like that. If you have a hook point that's fully exposed, now that's when you get your fish pinned, where you jack him, you've got him, the fish is swimming, and then that hook point goes dunk into the log, and now you are kind of screwed because now you have to back it up and get it. But that hook is way less likely to hook into it because the way it's shaped, it's back flush up against the fish. So those are two little things that you can do to get more fish out of deep blowdowns.
Right, and here's
Fair
a
assessment?
key, and it's a very 100% accurate. Now, here's another thing about this setup here. These hooks here are designed not to be hook set straight up and down. You got to have an angle and you pull them into the fish. That's how these hooks are designed. Where your straight shank hook is better straight up and down hook set.
Yeah.
Where this is designed for a pull hook set.
Okay. So at an angle where you're pitching 20, 30 feet away from the boat.
Exactly.
On the side.
100%. And so these are my go-to style hooks here. Now, it's not a true EWG style hook. Okay? It's similar, but it's more of a Cahill style here. I'll just undo it. Jeez, oh man.
And the EWG style works too as well.
Yes.
Better than a straight shank.
Right. See, this has got more of a deep gut right on the top of the hook, where the EWG comes out and around and down. This pins the fish, just like you said. This hook here pins on top of the fish when he comes through, and the more pressure he puts,
stuck on anything else.
No, and the more pressure he puts, the harder he's pinned up there. That's why I use these style hooks all the time. It's my all-time favorite. And here, I'll even be honest with you guys. I punch with them too. Guys look at me and go, "God, you're crazy punching with that." Well, you know what's funny? I don't remember losing a fish on this, so I'm not changing it. You know what I mean? If I start losing fish, I'm gonna alter what I'm doing. But until I start, it's like the knot, Matt. I use the Palomar, you use the Palomar. I'm not changing it until it doesn't work.
In the grass on the straight hook sets, what a lot of the really good flippers have done over the years is, you would think, one more point on that. Always peg too. That way, when you've got it over limbs over limbs, you're keeping it as a complete package. You don't have to wait on one side of the limb. The bait
right here. If you look here, I'll give you the perfect example right now. God, these pegs are great. Okay, so if you're not pegged and your bait's coming up over the branch, and you get on the branch, that weight not being pegged just slides down your line, and that's what tangles you up in everything.
Yep.
You have no more control over this. It's doing whatever it wants to do. As long as that bait is pegged, it's going where the sinker goes. You have total control over getting it up and over stuff, letting it fall straight through stuff. That's why, and I peg always. I very rarely, if ever, do not have a pegged slip sinker. I never not peg it, to be honest with you. I don't.
I will not peg a big worm sometimes if I know that I'm fishing a shallow brush pile and I'll only throw like an 1/8 ounce or 3/16 ounce weight
Right.
on it. That's the only time that I won't peg.
Yeah, when I use it, like a lot of a trick down south, like on Murray and lakes like that, is throw a 10-inch worm on a 3/16 ounce slip sinker. Don't peg it and structure fish it. And actually we're throwing it on 10 and 12 pound
Oh
fluoro.
wow.
Yeah, it's freakish because it goes against everything you want. So in that, like that's actually how I made my first classic, was doing that. I had two 10-inch worm setups. Both had a 3/16 ounce slip sinker on them, but one of them I had on 20-pound line, the other one I had on 12. And I threw the 12 on the structure. I threw the 20 in the deep brush piles.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when I ran to the last brush pile, I grabbed the wrong rod, and I pitched the 12 in there. I got the bite, I set the fish up, and immediately he seesawed me down there, and I broke him off. And it was a giant. I threw the rod in the bottom of the boat, picked up my other one with the 20, threw it back in there. I got another one, and it was 5/8.
No way.
Yeah, that's how I made the classic. So now, if you look at all my rods and reels, right on the handle,
Says what it is.
right on the handle where you push the thumb bar down, I have the pound test line on it, because that was the first time I made that mistake and the last time I ever made that mistake. It almost cost me the classic. Now, here, conversely, I could have landed 2 5-pounders out of that brush pile.
Mm-hmm.
And
You don't think it was the same one?
I do not know, because I broke them off.
But he didn't have it in his mouth or anything.
No.
Anyway, when you saw that peg, all I was saying was a lot of the guys who are flipping grass now, instead of going with a 6/0 or a 5/0, when they're punching, are going with a 2 or 3/0 straight shank that they're snelling, because you're still having a smaller hook with less gap, less chance of getting it caught in the hyacinth and stuff coming out. It's just less hook point. So just a couple of tips that I've come across that you seem to
right. I'm still not a fan of the straight shank hook. I'm just not. I have had.
I mean, Brad's the same way too. Brad Hallman, he's a big time EWG guy. I mean, he'll throw a straight shank when he's like straight flipping grass and stuff. But as a whole, he's 80% off EWG offset, 20% straight, and I'm just the opposite.
Yeah, I can't do a straight shank hook. I have had too much success doing what I'm doing, and I don't lose them, and I'm not going to go down that road. Plus, I don't, plus here's what I like about these hooks. There's more space. I can use a smaller hook and have more space between the soft plastic and the belly of my hook. The rule of thumb is you want the belly to be 2 times the soft plastic width.
Okay.
And that's all you need, because now your soft plastic's going to move out of the way far enough to get the hook in the fish. With a straight shank hook, your hook's coming out of the fish here. And so let me see something here. With the straight shanked hook, this is probably not going to illustrate my point. It won't, but we'll try.
I see what you mean. You have more of a gap faster. Your gap is maintained with the offset, as opposed to just in the very belly of it, to where there's way more room for that bait to collapse on that hook.
Exactly. 100%. And that's why I like these. And I can't get myself to do it. I have them. I even tied my keeper systems on them and everything. And I have them. And every time I go to rig one up, I go, no, I'm not
personal
doing
preference.
it.
If it's working for you.
Yeah.
I mean, try it out, but I mean, you guys stick with what you have confidence in. What else we got? That was a great rendition, a great walkthrough of some baits and approaching some cover that I think 75-80% of people will come across in the next month during their expeditions on the water.
Yeah, they better be, or they're not catching them. It's not as complicated as it has to be, and it's not as easy as it looks. In other words, what I'm saying is, you got to pay attention to all the variables, pay attention to your bottom composition, pay attention to your structure, what your contour lines are doing, pay attention to the type of wood, pay attention to where your biggest bites are coming from. And that's the whole key. You see my lure choices on them. I'm sure you got your own lure choices that you like. This is what I have success with. And
Hey, and if you like Frank's selections and would like to get some of them of your own,
that's right.
Code Bass Talk, capital BASSTALK for 50% off.
One word.
LureNet.com.
One word, Bass Talk. All caps, 15% off. And we are loaded. We got we have the spine craw colors in. We've got, everything should be loaded up pretty good. So, have at it, guys. I appreciate all the listeners, and anytime that we can do something to help you guys out, we're going to do it.
That's good stuff. It's getting that time of the year, Frank. We're going to have new fish stories. We're going to have big, giant fish coming in. I mean, especially for you up north, it's in full swing down south already, but I know this is that kind of 2 or 3 week window where you guys up there, Ohio, Minnesota, New York,
Michigan.
You start getting a little twitchy.
Oh, yeah.
You got season openers. You got fish. I mean, everything is starting to happen. So it's an exciting time of the year.
Oh, yeah. And they're getting them. They're getting them here.
All right. This has been another exciting edition of BTL Day 4 with Frank Scalish. We'll be back with another live edition next week. We'll see you later.